We should be live in a second. Okay, so before we begin the formal, I would assume it's the conclusion of Birchas Hananen today, of the halachis. Discuss a little bit about the subjects of this past week's parsha. Now, maybe I've mentioned this before, and if I have, let me know. So this week's parsha had 53 mitzvahs, a mitzvah-packed parsha. Parshas Mishpatim. And the vast majority of the laws in Parsha dealt with laws relating to man, between man and fellow, bein adam lechaveri. And one of the things that we learn from the Torah's perspective of Jewish monetary claims in front of a Bezdin, and how the Torah adjudicates them, is that it's often very different from secular law, and sometimes very different than logic would dictate. I'll give an example, and this is what I want you to tell me if we've been through this before. A person who ripped his shirt on a nail in a public area. Did we ever discuss this?
No.
Okay.
I've done it.
It's happened, yes, okay. You've lived it. Have we discussed the implication? That's really my question. Okay, just one moment. Just getting this right here. Okay, here we go. So this was a case that happened a few years back. And the case was as follows. An individual built his sukkah in the entranceway to a building. He was a member of the building, a resident, and he built a sukkah towards the corridor that leads into the building from the outside, but in a way that it took about 70% of the walkway. So the 100% walkway area, which was wide enough for two carriages to go in both directions, now turned into a very slim area, which even with one carriage, it was, you really had to push your way through to maneuver it. Now, this individual not just infringed on the public property or the property of the building tenants, but he wanted to be mahadrin in it, to do it, mahadrin mina mahadrin, to be scrupulous in his invasion of the public property. So instead of taking his hammer and doing a few extra knocks to the nails, he made sure to leave the nails a few centimeters sticking out. So just in case somebody walks by, he'll, make sure to get more than one shirt after he's done. And obviously he didn't do this on purpose, but my point is he carelessly left his nails sticking out. And an individual, Erev Shabbat, Erev Sukkos, had put on his brand new suit to walk to shul with, and lo and behold, he wasn't paying attention that because of this guy, he now has to go like this through the area, and the nail that was sticking out grabbed onto his jacket and made a huge tear in the sleeve. And he was obviously very upset.
Is this true?
Oh, this is a true story. And he was obviously very upset. And he confronted the owner of the sukkah. He told him, "What are you doing?" So first of all, number one, and this we discussed in Hilchos Sukkos when we went through Hilchos Sukkos together, I believe, that you're not allowed to build your sukkah in a public area or in an area that you're not the only owner, unless you get permission from the other owner. And you're infringing on our use of this property, and your sukkah, therefore, is not fully kosher. You're not allowed to say a bracha leisha b'sukkah in the sukkah. I don't know if he told him that, but that's the halacha. He's not allowed to say a bracha leisha b'sukkah in the sukkah.
He has not asked him permission?
Even if he did, you can ask, and the answer is no. I mean, you still do it. Some people ask just for the sake of asking and do it anyways. That's not called asking. Asking means you've asked the building manager, and the building manager has the permission of the tenants to give permission. But a building manager, he's not a dictator. He can't decide to do what he wants, and nobody gave him permission. So what he responded was, so that's from a halach perspective, Hilchos Sukkah. From Hilchos Sukkah perspective, you cannot say brachas, a bracha levatala, every time it says Elisha b'sukkah and such a sukkah, because he's on stolen property. these aren't very popular halachas. People think the main thing is I built a sukkah. It's ben Adon LaHashem, right? I built a sukkah. I'm sitting in a sukkah. It's public property, not public property. Who cares? No. Pashas Mishpatim is part of the Torah. We just read it. Everybody read it, right? So we learned that there's also laws between man and fellow. So that's number one. But now let's deal with the money. His issue was not whether he's saying a bracha levatala. His issue was, I want a new jacket. I want a new suit jacket. So the person told him, I don't have to pay you anything. I have a chazak. I've been doing this 5 years. I've been building my sukkah. Nobody ever said anything. Okay. So he came to me and he asked me, what do I do? So I told him I need to look into the halacha. First of all, I prefaced him and I said, no matter what I tell you, my ruling isn't binding because I didn't hear his side of the story. As much as your side sounds, true and dramatic and sad, it's forbidden, absolutely forbidden, which we learned from this week's parsha as well, for a to give judgment without the other side present. And he has to be present at the same time that the first side is giving his argument. So this was more advice of whether he can take it. Because the way it works in the Bezdin is that you have to first write your claim, make your claim, pay the fee, make your claim, and only afterwards, when the tribunal is together, do they decide, does your claim have any merit, does it not have any merit? So he wanted to save himself the process, to speak to Rav, to find out, is there anything I can do? Will I be meritorious in a court of Jewish law or not? This I'm going to look into it. And most people's initial perspective is, of course he's lying. This person was negligent. Of course he should have to pay for the suit. He left his nail sticking out. And furthermore, in Jewish law, we find that it's forbidden for an individual to leave items in a public property, in a public area that can cause damage to others. For example, you're walking back from the makolet and you had the bad luck of one of your oil bottles falling from your bag and it broke and it spilled on the floor. Unfortunately, most people will just continue with life as if nothing happened. You have an obligation to get a shmat and clean it up. Oil is slippery.
Yeah.
What if somebody slips on it? You can break somebody's leg.
Yeah.
You have an absolute Torah obligation. This is not a societal obligation. It's that too. But this is a Torah obligation from a religious perspective to clean it up. Now, water on a ground floor, not very slippery, won't really do anything. It's a marble floor or something else. But, so it depends on the case. But oil, or for another example, you just went to the hardware store and you bought yourself a whole bunch of supplies for your house, nails, screws, blah, blah, blah. And a bag as you're walking fell in the street all over the place. You're going to sit down now and pick them all up? You have to.
Yes.
What about all the car's tires? So you can't just do whatever you want. You have to clean it up. And that's, you're not allowed to leave a damaging item in the public area. Another example with dog owners. So legally, we know here in Israel, you're not allowed to have a dog without a leash. But it's not just legal; it's halacha. A person who lets a dog roam around without a leash, you have halachic permission to turn him into hot dog. Such a dog is asur to be left around. You have permission to kill him. You have permission to send him to the vet for locking up or giving away. It's not stealing. He's stealing from the gut. He's stealing from us. It doesn't matter. I have to wait for him to bite me. We're gonna now follow the Israeli shooting laws of when you're allowed to open fire. The open fire laws. Only if the Arab is about to kill you are you allowed to kill him back. No, it doesn't work that way according to Torah. It doesn't work that way.
The Rav of the town said the dog had to be killed, and they wouldn't kill it. They sent it to live in another town, and it knocked me to the ground and bit me in very, very seriously. And I
sent it to the hospital.
Yeah.
Well, if you're referring to the dog of the individual who spoke to me, then I told him that the dog should be killed.
Yeah.
And he told me that the dog was put down. That's what I was told. No, I didn't see that happen, but that's what I was told. 100%. In such a case, you don't have to do it in a gory way. You have shechting. They get a lot of fun out of shechting. They see the blood. It doesn't have to be gory. You can put some poison in a bowl of nice meat, and the dog will fall asleep, and he just won't wake up the next morning. That's a humane way of disposing the dog, but it's 100% mutter. in a backward society, people give more rights to animals than they give to humans. They protect the animals. I'm not saying we don't protect animals. You need both. But when it's or the animal or the human comes first.
One time, Anshel was walking and an owner with a dog not on a leash, and the dog, I guess, stuck growling at him. He was afraid it was going to attack. He took out his gun and shot it dead. The owner was very upset. He called the police. The police came. They said, "Was he on a leash?" He said, "No." They said,
Right. Yeah, that's the law. That's the law. Without a leash, they're dangerous. It's unfortunately a very backwards liberal perspective where, if there's a loose dog, it's scaring people, scaring kids. A woman can have a miscarriage because of it, and but they have all the animal rights. They give more rights to the animals than to the humans. The Torah's perspective is not that way. Of course, you need to have.
In Cornell, they protect the people, not the dog.
Good. Of course, it's an Isser D'Oraisa Tzar Balachayim, and anyone who's an animal owner has to treat the animal properly, etc. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, if there's a factor here of the human damage, then anyways, to get back to our point, so somebody who releases a dog and just lets his dog, he thinks he's doing nothing wrong. I'm just doing something illegal. No, he's doing something against halacha. He's doing something against Chayshon Mishpat. He's placing an animal, even if the animal never bit anybody. People are scared. You have little girls, they start screaming. You're scaring someone. You're not to scare someone according to halacha. Somebody wants to play a practical joke, and he's waiting at 2 o'clock in the morning for the first kid to wake up, and then he's going to say boo, and then start laughing. It's also to do. It's also to do such a thing. You're not allowed to scare people. And so even if he's a tame dog, if people are scared, he's not allowed to have it in the loose. And so on and so forth. In any case of where something of ours is in a public area that can cause damage to occur to somebody, it's forbidden for us to leave it there. Furthermore, if you see someone else's damaging item in a public area, there's a mitzvah for you to get rid of it. Even on Shabbos, even in a place without an Eruv. The Chachamim said something that can cause damage to the public, we are going to release you from the carrying prohibition, the rabbinical carrying prohibition. So you can move it every 4 amos, it says, you can pick it up. So let's say in Crown Heights, I see a broken beer bottle or alcohol bottle in front of 770. There's no Eruv, somebody can slip, somebody can hurt themselves. I'm allowed to pick it up and move it out of the way every 4 amos until it's in a safe side area.
even a plastic can be a danger. Plastic paper floating around can be very dangerous for a driver.
A piece of paper?
You know, you've seen the street papers or plastic that they, with the wind, can go into on a windshield.
Okay, whatever it can be assessed to be a visible danger, there's a mitzvah to get rid of it, even if you didn't do it.
Can I ask you something? On Shabbos, if you put candles and it starts burning, you're allowed to put the fire out?
Well, candles burning is a very good thing. I mean, what do you mean by burning?
No,
like
burning
a conflagration?
something.
Oh, something else. No, that's not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
That's not a good thing, 100%. What are we going to do? Wait for the house to burn down? It depends. Listen, if a match on the tray got, caught on fire, nothing's going to happen to leave it go out.
I mean,
But if something, of course, you have a chiyuv to put it out. You put it out right away.
Yeah, okay. But then
I
Yeah.
thought
heard
we
something
put
else.
water around. No?
You don't have to do that. That's only in the water case, is when there's no heter to put it out. There's no sakana. In a case where there's no danger, everybody can leave the house safely, and you just want to save your property. Then that's when you don't have a heter to put it out, and you need to do different tricks, such as the water trick. But in a building, in a normal civilized community, look at what happens in Australia. Half the country is gone. California, half the country is gone. State, whatever, I say country. Anyways. It's very dangerous, very, very dangerous. People lose lives in a building. You have also a central gas protocol. Normal protocol of the fire department is that when there's a fire in one apartment, they evacuate the entire section of buildings. Everybody. Why? What's the connection? The connection is very simple. Number one, it can spread. Number two, there's a central gas line. Central gas line gets touched. They can't take chances. It happened to us a few weeks ago. In the middle of work, all of a sudden, I hear someone on a megaphone. Everybody evacuated immediately. Everyone evacuated immediately. There was a fire in the building next door. They evacuated everybody from all the buildings. Yeah. Okay, so getting back to our case. So 100% usher for this individual to leave nails sticking out of his boards, even if he got permission. Let's say we all were meichel, we understand there's not enough space, this is the only spot. Okay, every building tenant said, we agree for him to make a sukkah there. Fine, but you can't put damaging items in the public, so he has no heter for his sticking out nails. So it's for sure usher to do what he did. The question is, if you already did it, who's liable for damages? If you dropped your nails on the street and now your next door neighbor was driving by as he saw you, he waved to you, and then he went over the nails and he's popped 2 of his tires. And he's like, I saw you drop those. You just popped my tires. Do you have to pay? Or if the person slipped and something happened, do you have to pay? So this enters, so even though, and this is very interesting in Choshen Mishpat, the monetary liability after the fact isn't always, and usually it's not, a sign of whether or not it was permitted to do to begin with. Something can be usher to do, but when it comes to forcing someone to give monetary payment for that, we may not rule that he's liable. Okay, then that doesn't mean it's okay what he did. So in this case, as follows. We have a number of different types of damaging categories in the laws of Nezikin, laws of damages, which was in this week's parsha. We learned about the goring ox. We learned about the fire, right? Somebody who made a bonfire in his backyard and he didn't put it out properly and it then spread and burnt down the whole block. He has to pay for everything. He has to now pay for every mortgage for every house. This was his fire. So there's different categories of damage. That's called Ishai. Eish. Now the damage called bar. Somebody dug a pit in the public area, and it doesn't have to be such a deep pit, even a small pit. And let's say a person is walking his dog, and the dog fell in the pit, and the dog died. Broke its legs and died. In such a case, the Baal Bar has to pay for the dog. He has to buy the guy a new dog. It was a nice, cute little poodle. Cost him 200 shekel. He has to buy it. Give him 200 shekel. That's the law. Now, the pit case is not limited to just a pit. In Shulchan Aruch, we learn that any damaging item in a public area is under the category called bar. So it's going to follow all the laws of bar. So if somebody left, like the oil, right? He left the oil and a person's poodle slipped on it. And I don't know, somehow something happened. It broke something. It broke a bone because of the slip on the oil. So that person will be liable for damages, just like the bar case. However, there are things that a bar, the Torah says, a person's not liable to pay for, such as a human. If a human was walking by and he fell into the ditch, and Chas v'shalom, he passed away from it. So in such a case, the person is not liable for payment. Not liable for payment. Again, what he did was a terrible thing, and he's going to need a kapara in heaven for causing someone's death. But is there a monetary compensation? In court, the answer is no. He cannot, and one of the reasons brought down is because people have to be aware. They have to look where they're going, etc. That doesn't mean that what he did was right, once again. However, if he didn't die but only got damage happened to the human, then we say he's liable to pay. It's a weird halacha. It's learned from Psukim. It's Xeris HaKasav. We don't really understand why. But nonetheless, an injured human is liable for payment. Someone who died from it is not liable. Now, what about a person's clothing? So the halacha is as follows. The nezek called bar, you're not liable for vessel damages. So, for example, I dropped my phone into the pit as I was walking. Well, the truth is it would break from any hit. But let's say it was a pit that was filled with water. Then I can't hold the guy liable for making the pit. because pit damages are exempt from damages to vessels. And in essence, they're only liable monetarily for animal damages and human injuries. That's it, nothing else. So, if an individual is walking by after this person spilled his oil bottle and didn't clean it up, and as he's walking, slips, falls, and God forbid breaks a bone, the person who left it there has to pay for his injuries. He has to pay for his, medical care, etc., etc. But let's say nothing happened to him, Baruch Hashem, but now he has an oily suit. He brought a brand new shirt, 150 shekel. It's gone to the garbage, full of oil, full of olive oil, full of canola oil, you name it. In such a case, we tell him we're very sorry. The guy who spilled the oil did a terrible thing that he didn't clean up after himself, but halachically we can't make him liable because this is a vessel damage and the bar category isn't liable for vessel damages. Based on all that information, we can now determine the story with our nail that ripped the suit. The person left the nail out, was doing a bar category damage and was doing a forbidden thing. But what he damaged was an item, was a vessel. Therefore, halachically, he is exempt from it. So that's what I told the individual. I said, listen, in a Beis Din, if you're following, your ruling according to the Torah laws, you wouldn't have a claim. He did a terrible thing. He did a bad thing. And the way he answered you was very wrong and unmenschlich. But, unfortunately, the Beis Din cannot give a psak din to force him to pay. However, that doesn't mean that it's a lost case. And this is where the main thing that I wanted to open up and discuss. And that's as follows. The Torah's laws regarding monetary compensation is not meant to remain as the final say in the matter. It's very different than Ben Adam L'Makim. Ben Adam L'Makim, a person can't say, well, I learned the Bible, I learned that God enjoys giving us all these commands, 613. I'm going to be extra from, I'm going to create a few more 100 commands. I want to do more. So I'll make a new holiday and I'll make new mitzvahs on that holiday. I'll add. The Torah says, do not add. Do not subtract and do not add. It's an Isser in the Torah. Okay. That's Ben Adam L'Makim, or Ben Adam L'Chaverei, between man and fellow. It's very different. You're allowed to be machmir and be mahader in Ben Adam L'Chaverei. You're allowed to be stringent and be scrupulous and go above and beyond. Not only are you allowed to, you have to. The Gemara says, as a Gemara, I believe in Sanhedrin, it's written in the Gemara, L'chorva Yerushalayim, Jerusalem was destroyed, Ela mipnei she'emidu es ha'Torah advar halacha. Jerusalem was destroyed, we were exiled because we established the Torah rule according to the halacha. Now, that's a very strange statement, which can be taken out of context by our fellow Reform and Conservative movement participants. You see, that's what destroyed Jerusalem, when you're going exactly like the book. You got to be reformed. You got to change things according to the time. That obviously was not the intent of the statement. And if they say, well, how can you go ahead and interpret it in a way that's not explicit? So we tell them, isn't that what you're doing to the whole Torah? So why can't we do it to one verse? All right. Anyways, so the real explanation is, it's talking about dinim of bein adam l'chaver, between man and fellow. We know that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed due to sinas chinam. This is not an additional reason why the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. This was the sinas chinam. That instead of you being a mensch and you apologizing to the individual for ripping his shirt or his suit or whatever it was, and offering compensation, you tell him, going to Allah, I don't have to pay you, I'm not giving you a dime. God's on my side. Hashem gave us a basis of where this is the minimum in Ben Adam L'Chaver. But you have a responsibility of having your own initiative of doing more and being proactive. And therefore, based on that perspective, in a Beis Din, and you have to know this, whenever someone takes someone else to a Beis Din, whether you're the defendant, the litigant, the prosecution, doesn't matter. You sign on shtar beirus, which is It's a legal document, meaning it has legal power in the country. It's called an arbitration agreement. It has powers in every country with arbitration laws that are passed and legislation, as well as it has halachic power. And what an arbitration agreement in essence does is that it sets the rules of the game for how this arbitration, how the adjudication will take place. And the way it works is as follows. When you sign an arbitration agreement today in a Besdin, they have a little line that states that you give the full authority to the Besdin, to the tribunal, to paskin according to pshara, not according to halacha, which means that you're giving them authority to go beyond the halachic standards and compromise. So when both sides sign on that, they are in essence signing away the Torah law. And you can say that's such a wrong thing. I went to a Bezdin in order so the Bezdin pass according to Torah, and I come in the Bezdin not going to Torah. I'll go to secular court. What's the difference? No. The same Torah that says that this person is not chayv to pay for the board damage also says it's a mitzvah to reach pshara. It's a mitzvah to reach a agreed upon, a pshara with a certain level of compensation in which both sides will be happy with. Now, obviously, this person can I can make a claim tomorrow morning that some very wealthy person here in Tzfas owes me $1 million, and I make it up. It's not true. And I said, okay, let's go to Besdin. We go to Besdin. I make him sign the arbitration agreement. I tell the Dayanim, let's do pshara, half. He'll keep 500,000. He'll give me 500,000. So obviously that's not how it works. It doesn't work in such a way. Obviously, it's based on Torah law. It's based on the calculation of Torah law. You have to bring proof. You need to have eidim. There's a whole process. But the point is that even after everything's finally said and done, the Besdin will have the authority, the legal and halachic authority, to sometimes swerve for the sake of balancing the peace between the parties. And that's called pshara. And so we see from all this is that it's the one, when the Torah said do not add, they didn't say they were grambanon l'chavere, and a person has to be machmir, to try to be machmir above and beyond the banon l'chavere. And even if the Torah exempted an individual, they should still try to use common sense. Was the person hurt by what I did? Was the person offended? Was this something, let's say in the nail case, just be a mensch. I mean, let's think about it. It's wrong. You did something negligent. According to Torah, we agree it's negligent. So you don't have to pay him, but you're allowed to pay him. You're allowed to give him compensation. In the end of the day, in this case scenario, the individual he didn't want to go to a Besdin. He wanted the headaches. It's a headache. I agree. It is a headache. It wasn't worth it. He didn't go to a Besdin. But unfortunately, the family who did this to them, I found out that they ended up getting fulfilled what the pasuk says, what the Gemara says, that they went to Galus, they moved out of Tzfas the next year. They were living here for like 15 years. The next year, they moved, they sold their house. I don't know what happened, but all I know is that they were gone. The next year, they were gone. They weren't living here anymore.
Do they have to go to Beit? Let's say he wanted to
legally, no. Morally, yes.
So the other fellow wouldn't have had to go.
Legally, well, if you managed to get him to a Besdin and managed to have him sign an arbitration agreement, then there was a chance, not for certain, but a chance he would be able to get some compensation. But someone who's smart, and that's why it's very, most people don't know this information. So they go to Besdin, they sign, and the Besdin can then, pass on based on pshara in a way that's not according to Torah law. But if somebody knows, if let's say this guy was knowledgeable, which maybe he was, I have no idea, of these details that I'm mentioning, he can tell the Besdin can tell him to come to court. They'll send him a hazman, and he'll say, listen, guys, I know what the claim is. You know what the claim is. There's no claim here according to Torah law. I'm not signing an arbitration agreement. If you want, I'll sign. Take away the rule that it says that you can do pshara. I want only Torah law, and I know the side is like me, so I know it's not going to go anywhere. So he has the right. You have the right to decide, to demand. You can't force someone to agree to pshara.
Could the injured party have taken the authorities in the building who let him put his sukkah in the park?
Halachically, no. There's no claim against them. It could be there. Well, you're saying the sukkah itself to be there. Yeah, there's definitely a claim. I mean, if it wasn't with the building's consent, then there's a claim of infringement of public property. Sure. Now, can you make him pay? You can't make him pay for anything. You can make a claim so he dismantles the sukkah. In other words, you can make that claim to not allow him to do it here on further, but there won't be any monetary compensation in such a case.
And if he did it anyway, what would happen?
A person who does such a thing, I'm allowed to, according to halacha, to take my hammer and take apart a sukkah and pile it up and put it on the side in the middle of Chalamayit.
Because it's not.
And if he comes, what are you doing? So what do you mean, what am I doing? You built your sukkah in a public area. You're stealing from the property from the public. You have no right to have your sukkah here. I have the full right to take it down, but we're very nice people. Mm-hmm. The people who do this are sometimes, but we're very nice people. We don't want fights. We don't want issues, so we don't do it. We don't do it. We're not biryainin. But technically, you can go ahead. You can take apart the guy's sukkah. You can pile it up. The same way it says regarding a shiur. A person's ox is wandering around the streets, making everybody scared. Take the ox, shecht him, make some steaks, and deliver the steaks to the owner. So yeah, you take apart the guy's sukkah. He'll come back. He'll see all of his boards piled up. Tell him it was a huge wind. It was crazy. A wind came like this, a whole tornado in it. Yeah. Okay, so these are the lessons of Parshas Mishpatim, very important lessons of how we need to be machmir l'chavera. Chumras are not just to buy the most mahadran tefillin and know all the details of Hilchos Brachos. God wants us to be machmir with our fellow Jews. A good rule of thumb is as follows: if you assess that there's a possibility that the person may feel offended, that the person may feel that you owe them something, then that's already a sign that you should try to do something about it. Okay, we were in the middle of Birchas Hanenin towards the end. We dealt last week regarding Bracha Achreina, and we're dealing with now a few more halachas, like assorted halachas that have to do with brachas. This is now in Bracha Rishayna. When a person makes a bracha on a food, on a mitzvah, whatever it is, he has an obligation to fulfill the mitzvah, to eat the food, drink the liquid right away. You're not allowed to make an interval even silently. So all the oohs and ahs that we practice this Shabbos in your house, right? That's no good after a bracha. That's no good.
Just saying.
Huh?
Nothing personal.
We had a big family, Shabbos meal, and when you have so many people, everyone's washing, so there's a long from the washing to the actual eating, to the hamaitzi. But that's a little different because I already fulfilled the mitzvah. I washed hands. That's the mitzvah. I have to wash hands before making the hamaitzi. So it's not the same case. Here we're talking about a person said hamaitzi already. And after that, he has to eat the food right away. Therefore, the halach is that the first person who has to eat the bread after cutting it on Shabbos is the person who said hamaitzi. He should not continue cutting till he is chewing the bread. He has to be the first one, and not just the first one, so I'll cut 10 slices, and I'll be the first one. No, cut one slice for yourself, dip it in salt 3 times, eat it, start eating it, and then you can continue with the rest of the cutting. And so on and so forth with all brachas, that we don't make even silent intervals, even silent interruptions. Now, because of this, it's recorded that a food that is hard to cut should already be cut into before the bracha, in order so you save time on the cutting.